Welcome to the October 6, 2022 Board of Zoning Appeals meeting. We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order at 6:01. We'll start with staff announcements. Moving quickly, sorry, Amy.
Sorry, I'm gonna get prepared. I'd like to welcome William Scales, our newest BZA member. Thank you for joining us,
Absolutely, my
William.
pleasure.
Oh, and I guess I have one more. We also have a new staff member, Ariella Stanford. She'll be joining us. She'll be taking over from Chelsea very soon, so you'll see that transition. We'll have both here tonight, possibly next month, and then Ariella will take over.
Perfect. Welcome, William. Good to have you on board. All right, so next we have consideration and approval of the August 4th, 2022 meeting minutes.
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Greg for approval. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by William. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Seeing none opposed, the minutes are approved. All right, so next we'll move to, it's going to be item number 1. It's a variance request to exceed the maximum allowed 10-foot candles by 14.1-foot candles on a privately owned sports court for the property located at 701 Cool Springs Boulevard. Staff?
Thank you. Good evening. The subject parcel is located at 701 Cool Springs Boulevard, and it's zoned RC12, Regional 12 Commerce District. A commercial office building is located on the subject property, and there has been a recent site plan submittal that has approved revitalization of the open space areas adjacent to the commercial space. Part of that revitalization is a sports court which is privately owned, but the owner intends to have it open to the public and available for use until 10 p.m., at which time the lights will be shut off by a timer. The zoning ordinance requires the maximum light level be 10-foot candles, and the applicant is requesting to exceed that maximum by up to 14.1-foot candles for the approved sports court. This staff analysis is the 3 criteria that we discuss at every BZA meeting, and I'll start with the first criteria, where by reason of exceptional narrowness, shallowness, or shape of a specific piece of property at the time of the enactment of the zoning ordinance, or by reason of exceptional topographic conditions or other extraordinary and exceptional situation or condition, such a piece of property is not able to accommodate development as required under this zoning ordinance. The subject property is a privately owned sports court on a commercially zoned property. This type of sports court is usually attached to a public park or a school, and the ordinance makes concessions for such uses by not imposing a maximum light level. In the past 8 years, no sports courts of this nature have been reviewed or approved, and because of the extraordinary and exceptional situation or condition of the use of a commercial private sports court, staff finds this criteria met. The second criteria is that the strict application of any provision enacted under the zoning ordinance would result in peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties to, or exceptional or undue hardship upon, the owner of the property. Staff can find no peculiar and exceptional practical difficulties or exceptional or undue hardship upon the owner if this variance is not granted. The use of the sports court can be limited by the zoning ordinance requirement if the additional foot candles request is not granted, but it in no way prohibits the proposed use of the sports court. Staff finds this criteria is not met. Number 3 is that such relief may be granted without substantial detriment to the public good and without substantially impairing the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. The applicant's proposal of additional foot candles will not cause substantial detriment to the public good. The site is in a commercially zoned area with no residential areas adjacent to it, and the required light levels at the property line are still being met. In terms of intent, the zoning ordinance does grant exceptions for the foot candle requirements in section 14.2D for limited uses, including public parks and school sports courts. Such uses listed in this section have a means to regulate both the timing and operation of the sports courts. This property has no such parameters that regulate its use in an enforceable way. Therefore, Relief cannot be granted without substantially impairing the purpose and intent of the zoning ordinance. Staff finds this criteria not met. Staff recommends that the Board of Zoning Appeals move to disapprove the variance request to exceed the maximum allowed 10-foot candles by 14.1-foot candles on a privately owned sports court for the property located at 701 Cool Springs Boulevard because the criteria for granting a variance has not been met. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for any questions.
Thank you, staff. Is the applicant present? If you could step forward for us and state your name for the record. And add any comments you wish, so. Thanks.
My name is Chuck Ganaway. I'm with Hastings Architecture, representing Highwoods Properties. I want to thank you guys for your time this evening, and thank you, Chelsea. This, as Chelsea mentioned, this is a project at the corner of Carruthers and Cool Springs Boulevard. It's an office campus. There's 3 office buildings on the site, about 570,000 square feet, with associated parking decks on about 32 plus acres of land. Office parks are typically, they're tough to bring to life. They're tough to energize. It's a challenge to energize these office parks after 5 o'clock. And they're typically pretty dark on the weekends. And now, post-pandemic, we're also working hard to try to, give folks good reason to get back to the office. At Cool Springs Park, this is a complete reimagining of the green space there. We're not adding any office square footage. This is strictly an investment in the outdoor amenity. This includes a new event lawn, an associated pavilion, a small 1,500 square foot little cafe building, reorienting of all the paths and walkways, outdoor meeting spaces, playground, and of course the sports court. Part of the goal and the mission for this project is to create an active green space, to really extend the life of this campus and provide opportunities for the tenant customers to, take part in a healthier lifestyle and extend the life of this park beyond 5 o'clock. And by allowing the court to be illuminated, this really helps provide that opportunity for everyone. Maybe people stay a little bit longer. Maybe it helps disperse traffic a little bit. At the end of the day, maybe they play a game of pickleball and then go down the street for dinner before they go home. Maybe they bring their family there on the weekends and let their kids play on the playground. So that's in essence kind of the goal here. From a lighting standpoint, this lighting and the exceeding of the foot candles is very focused on the court. It's very directional. It's achieved by 6 15-foot poles. And they are proposed to be on a timer, like maybe a 30-minute timer. So after dusk, if someone wants to play pickleball, they set the timer, goes off after 30 minutes. They're still on the court, they got to reset it. But in any case, these lights would not be operational past 10 o'clock. Highwoods is, they want to encourage a safe and enjoyable atmosphere, but they also don't want people playing basketball at 2 a.m. on their property. Regarding, thinking about precedent here, this is, we think, a pretty unique condition. We are surrounded by office buildings and a parking garage. We're 730 feet away from the nearest home. And we think there's likely probably a small number of examples of this condition around the county. So in summary, we're trying to do something different, and we understand that. We believe that allowing the court to be illuminated will really go a long way in bringing an energy to this campus, and making it active, making it used, making it, have some life to it after 5 o'clock in the weekends. So I appreciate your time again. I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
I'll go ahead and ask this question. I think it's pertinent. So we're looking at the foot candle requirement. I think there's an exhibit in the staff packet that shows, it's the photometric plan.
Yes,
So it's the gridded plan where you have, anywhere on the exterior of that from, 0.1 to, I'll say 3 foot candles.
Yep.
And the tennis court, so I'm not a foot candle expert. Could you give us some kind of indication of what, within that tennis court, we're looking at 16 foot candles, 22 foot candles. What would that compare to, if you can just give us an idea for description?
well, yeah, I might get Danny Danny's our lighting designer. I might bring him up here in a minute if needed, but the design of the lighting is based on IES, Illumination Engineering Society standards for courts. So we can't have it under illuminated per those standards. It opens up potential liability. If something happens and it's under illuminated and someone falls and gets hit by a basketball or whatever, right? That's the basis for the design. Does that answer your question?
It does, a more like comparison to like a commercial parking lot. So I'm thinking of a strip center. What does that average foot candle look like compared to this?
5 in a lot? What would you?
Yeah, I mean, our maximum in the zoning ordinance is 10 for parking lots.
Parking lots?
Yeah, and that's a maximum.
Most parking lots are probably lit to a 2 or 3 foot candle.
Okay.
It's almost 2.5 times as absolutely necessary under this IES standard. Going to 24.1 is absolutely necessary under the IES standard? Is that what I'm hearing? Or is that just the range you'd like to have?
There's probably an average. I mean, when those foot candles are run, they're, it's all computer generated, and you're gonna have hot spots, and you're gonna have, it's not consistent, and it also gets out in reality perception of what's out there. But from a standard of engineering and lighting design, it's gonna be, there's gonna be a range. Do you know what the goal, the average goal is, Danny?
Yeah, for a multi-functional court like this,
Yeah. Yeah.
If you can state your name for us as well, that way we'll get it in the minutes.
yeah, I'm Danny Strite. I'm with DHS Lighting Design in Nashville. We're an architectural lighting design firm. So for recreational use courts, and this is a multi-use court, the fact that it's pickleball and basketball combined, the average would be about 20-foot candles. And for that diagram that you see there, there's still, if this does go through and the court is lit, there would be an aiming diagram done for this court that you'd see probably smooth that out a little bit between the highs and the lows.
Okay. I think that's helpful. We may have other questions. I just wanted to get that out there to start with. So,
No, of course.
okay. Any other comments?
Not for me.
Okay. All right. So next we'll open the public comment. Are there any citizen comments? Nobody's excited by foot candles, I see. Okay, motion made to close the public comment by Greg. Is there a second?
I second.
Second by William. All in favor say aye. Aye. All right, so public comment's closed.
Would it be okay for me to ask a question of staff, Mr. Chair? So my question, the court itself is not the concern. It is purely the illumination. So a court of this nature being on this zoned property has no bearing on our ability to allow them to go forward.
We are not concerned about the use. Primarily, we're concerned about the standard itself, yes.
Okay.
Any other questions at all? We can kind of discuss the item after a motion's made, but if you've got kind of factual questions for us, for the applicant or staff, you can ask us.
I do have a few more questions for the applicant, if you don't mind. under normal circumstances, when would you expect the lights to turn off? So would these turn off at 5 PM and then the manual switch is engaged? Is it,
I don't think it's on unless someone turns it on. Okay, unless someone wants to use that court after dusk,
okay.
they have to go turn the timer on. And it's maybe a 30-minute, so it just doesn't burn.
So then, if the owner of the sports court wants to host an event there for its employees or something like that, do they have a mechanism where they can turn the light on, it remains illuminated? Or will they be subject to that same manual turning on for 30 minutes?
From a lighting control standpoint, I think if the landlord owner wanted to do that, we could design that. And maybe that's not available to the public at the sports court. But everything else would be in place as far as, it shutting off or limiting it to, 10 o'clock.
And then, I'm just curious, maybe this is not appropriate, I don't know, but do you have a response to the 2 staff comments that were no recommendations?
Well, we think it is an exceptional condition because it's very different. We understand we're not a public park. It's private development. There is, as Chelsea mentioned, there is exceptions for that. We just like to be viewed kind of in a similar light, so to speak, as that, even though it's on private property. Highwoods plans to, they have property managers, of course, and security that checks all their properties, and they would be managing this court. Their plan is to, reserve the court. They could check out the equipment to use on the court, but that would be, their thought is that would be handled by whoever's operating the fitness center on site as well. So there's going to be, they have to control it in that way.
Thank you for that. I think my concerns would be around the security and what maybe a glowing beacon of this nature in the middle of a relatively desolate, I'm assuming after 5 o'clock, this place becomes a bit of a ghost town.
Well, that's what we're trying to.
Yeah, trying to help.
We're trying to help, and like I said, there's a pavilion where they might have some outdoor performances at some point. There's a cafe building where we hope we'll get a vendor in there to,
Sure.
Have some after hours, events or whatever. But yeah, like I said, we're trying to kind of break that mold and extend the life of the campus a little bit.
I think security would be my biggest concern. I'm prepared to present a motion if you all would.
And
hear
let me
it.
say, sorry, like I said, they have 3 big office buildings there. They have 2 office buildings across the street, and they have security that is, periodically checking the campus, today, of course.
If you're ready, Greg, to make a motion, feel free.
Yeah, I would like to present a motion to approve the variance, which requires the maximum, approve the variance from the ordinance, which requires the maximum light level to be 10-foot candles, to the applicant requested maximum by up to 14.1 foot candles, which would result in 24.1 foot candles for the approved sports courts. The reason for that is I believe that, as staff has pointed out, we have not yet received a request of this nature in a commercially zoned property in 8 years. And to my knowledge, there are no sport courts of this nature that we've looked at or that are in the community. I believe that the strict application of this provision would result in a peculiar and exceptional practical difficulty for the owner of the property, and I believe that given the nature and the orientation and the location, that strict application of this zoning ordinance does result in peculiar and exceptional, can be given without substantial detriment to the public good.
Okay.
Do I need to repeat that last one? I fumbled that a bit.
You don't. I think you did a great job.
Okay.
So motion for approval with detail from Greg. Is there a second?
For purpose of discussion,
Sure.
I'll second it.
I'm happy to discuss. One thing that I may want to review with my fellow board members is the time. If there's an opportunity for us to put a limit on the approved time for the variance to exist.
I would refer you over to, to Bill for language, just so that we can get it right.
Sure.
Yeah.
And I don't know, if William, if you have any additional questions before we go to Bill.
You raised a point that I kind of thought about but didn't really explore, and that's safety. And I think you're exactly right, that if we do create this space where there's this bright illumination, it will draw people. Now, I know that's part of the idea, but, you know, with the positive comes also the negative, and there's that neighborhood that's just right there. So I'm curious, do you share those concerns? I mean, you seem to, at least right now, be in favor of it, but do those dissuade you at all, or?
I think they certainly cause pause for me in presenting this motion. However, I look at it and say, 2022 work and life is something that's a little bit different than maybe 2010. And I think as I look at where this court will be situated relative to the neighborhood, it felt sheltered, and the light and the limit and the opportunity for the light to flow over into those neighborhoods would be less. I think what you're raising is a good question about I'm not worried about the light, I'm worried about maybe the people that the light attracts.
Correct.
And my hope is that Hastings is a well-known building management organization, and that if they start to have crime or something more sinister show up, they'll cut the lights off.
I think to this item, so one thing that's unique to me, so variances just in general. You talk about small town Tennessee, we're looking at setback variances. Like in Franklin, robust zoning ordinance, we're looking at things that wouldn't apply to other situations. I'm guessing this, if we approve the variance for lighting, it's gonna apply to this whole lot in perpetuity. Do we know that answer?
That's a great question.
It may not matter if we're not gonna plan sports courts. I mean, ordinarily, you wouldn't want, 20-foot candles in a parking lot, but
Sure, so really what you're addressing is the item that's actually before you right now. So thinking about it as applying to a lot doesn't really help a lot, because we have another plan for additional things on the lot.
So to be clear, make sure that I'm following you, this is for this sports court and the illumination of this sports court. And so they couldn't build another sports court in the back and use this same variance.
Well, it depends on whether they need to submit another plan, probably not. If they have to submit another plan, then that has to get reviewed by staff, that determination's made, if they don't like that, then they can do that.
Thank you.
Is there an answer to that question?
Yes and no. If it's enough to trigger things like a new balance of stormwater detention features because now they've had additional impervious surfaces added, then it would trigger some sort of plan revision. So likely, but perhaps not completely.
so we're saying then if a site plan was required, another variance would be required for another, let's say they add a second sports court. I'm kind of going down a path here, but that's kind of what I'm trying to get answered, I guess, is that would require a second variance just because we're approving this plan here.
Yes.
Okay. I feel better about that. I mean, I think that situation is unlikely, just given it's an extreme example, but I just want to make sure that we know what we're approving, at least as a body.
I think I'm more concerned now about the time, because the light variance normally would not, there, in a residential commercial, in a regional commerce district, are there hours where the lights have to come down?
No, there's no timing where lights have to be lower. We have the maximums for that reason.
Greg, you seem to want to discuss a limitation.
Well,
Can you talk more about that? I'm just curious what that.
Yeah, I think it's to avoid the 2 a.m. game.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
results in some folks coming in, and I think as a good neighbor, you wouldn't do that, but I think we've all lived in neighborhoods with people we thought were good neighbors until we moved in. And maybe not everybody has experienced that, but I want to make sure that we provide good guidance for the occupant and for the owner of the property, while also looking out for those who
I agree,
may be
yeah.
disturbed.
Is there a way that we can limit the time that these lights can be on and have it be enforced?
You can certainly attach conditions. It's not terribly common to restrict time in particular, but given these circumstances, that would be a reasonable thought for you all to think about. So you could, yes.
And I would want to do so with making sure that it's not unnecessarily constrictive to the tenant or the owner of the property. Does 10 PM during the week and midnight on weekends, is that something that you could agree with?
Yes.
Or would you rather us do 10 o'clock across the board for consistency?
I mean, I would probably argue for midnight, but 10 o'clock, if that's gonna, if everyone agrees it's 10 o'clock, I think that's fine.
Okay.
And that's what we proposed in the justification letter was a 10 PM cutoff.
Okay. Well, if I'd be able to make an amendment to my initial motion.
You know, the amendment has to be a second, then you vote on the amendment. If
Sure.
the original is amended, then you vote.
I'd be in favor of 10 o'clock across the board
I
versus.
think that's where I'm going.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'd like to make a motion to amend my initial motion to include a 10 PM cutoff, at which time the lights must be, cannot exceed the traditional maximum level, which is 10-foot candles.
Okay, motion to amend made with additional conditions. Is there a second?
There's a second.
Second by William. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. So now we're back to the main motion, I believe. So
As
the amended
amended, yeah.
motion. Yep.
And I just have one more question now we're talking about it. Can you talk about sound, how sound travels? Because I'm still thinking about this neighborhood that's 700 feet away. Do you all have any expertise to speak to me about sound? Because people playing pickleball, basketball at 10 PM on a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday night may disturb the folks in the neighborhood.
Sure. We haven't done a specific analysis of this specific condition, but the fact that we are bound by office buildings and parking garage is incredibly helpful. That's why I thought it'd be helpful to kind of see that site plan and where this sports court is located. The nearest home I mentioned of 730 feet away is on the other side of a three-story parking deck. But as far as any detailed analysis of basketballs traveling over that building or the sound from that, we have not done that.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the location, given the other structures in the area, feels like it's almost in its own little amphitheater in the center there, so. But it's a good question.
Yep, so got motion for approval with conditions, a second. I'll just add, I do think it is unique. You know, the fact to me that if it was a city tennis court, multipurpose court, the lights would probably be the same light level. As a participant there, if I had a kid that was playing on the courts, I would want it lit.
And I should say on behalf of, I think, the citizens of Franklin, I think it's important for us to have opportunities for our citizens to get out and become active that are outside. We've got fantastic weather, 3 seasons of the year, and we should enjoy it. And I hope that with the approval of this variance, that hopefully we can see people who come and work and live here enjoy the outdoor facilities.
Any further discussion?
Nothing from me.
Okay, let's vote then. All in favor, say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Seeing none, the variance is approved with conditions.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
So next is item 2. It's a variance request to waive the substantial improvement requirement to raise the first floor elevation of a historic structure above the base flood elevation, which is to remain in place, located within the Historic Preservation Overlay, the Central Franklin Overlay, and the Floodway Fringe Overlay at 728 Fair Street. Staff?
Thank you. The subject property consists of a .19 acre parcel zoned R4 residential 4 district with a historic house that was constructed in 1915. The subject parcel is located within the Historic Preservation Overlay, the Central Franklin Overlay, and the Floodway Fringe Overlay. This house is a contributing historical structure to the Hinchyville Historic District, and the Historic Zoning Commission provided a favorable recommendation to the BZA at its September 2022 meeting for the building to remain at its existing first floor elevation, as the proposal is the most sensitive to the architectural qualities of the contributing structure and presents the least amount of adverse impact to the contributing status of the historic structure and the context of the overall historic district. The variance request is to allow the first floor elevation height to remain at its current position below base flood elevation for the property located at 728 Fair Street. There are 3 criteria for this type of variance. It is different than the criteria that we just discussed. These are a little shorter and a little more to the point. A showing of good cause, a good and sufficient cause is number 1. This building status as a contributing property to the Hinchyville Historic District and the need to take measures to maintain the status amount to good and sufficient cause for granting a variance. This proposal is the most sensitive, as I stated, to the architectural qualities of the contributing structure and present the least amount of adverse impact to the contributing status of the historic structure and the context of the historic, overall historic district. Staff finds that this criteria is met. Number 2 is a determination that failure to grant the variance would result in exceptional hardship. The historic house currently sits below base flood elevation. The proposal is to keep the historic house at its existing level in order to keep its contributing status on the National Register of Historic Places. The Historic Zoning Commission determined that raising the house to the base flood elevation would cause it to become non-contributing to the Hinchyville Historic District, which is both locally designated and listed on the National Register of Historic Places. An attempt to raise the historic structure would result in the removal of the property's contributing status and would amount to exceptional hardship for the owner of the property. And for these reasons, staff finds this criteria met. Number 3 is a determination that the granting of a variance will not result in increased flood heights, additional threats to public safety, extraordinary public expense, create nuisance, cause fraud on or victimization of the public, or conflict with existing local laws and ordinances. The house has been standing for 107 years. There are no recorded reports of water damage nor water collecting in the home at its current first floor elevation. Furthermore, the Historic Zoning Commission has approved the project plans as proposed and recommends approval of the variance request to maintain the structure's contributing status and the integrity of the historic district. Based on the recommendation of the Historic Zoning Commission, along with analysis of exhibits provided by the applicant, staff finds that granting the variance would not result in any of the outcomes listed above, and the 3rd criteria is met. Staff recommends the Board of Zoning Appeals move to approve the variance request to waive the substantial improvement requirement to raise the first floor elevation of a historic structure above the base flood elevation located within the Historic Preservation Overlay, the Central Franklin Overlay, and the Floodway Fringe Overlay at 728 Fair Street because the criteria for granting a variance has been met. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, staff. Is the applicant present? You can step forward for us and state your name for the record.
I'm short. Hold on. There we go. Okay. Hi, I'm Amanda McCreary. I'm an architect with Chisel Workshop, and we are representing the client on this project. So, as you can see in the exhibits, our base floor elevation is below the 3 foot above base flood elevation requirement. That would require us to raise the existing floor structure by 6 feet. I think you can see in the exhibits the images that we have put together. We have a pyramidal style 1-story house, and it sets on grade with the rest of the street. So raising it from a historic standpoint, we would not only lose our contributing status, but typically when they raise homes, you can't keep your front porch. And that would have to be rebuilt. Our front porch is historic, and that's what's the defining character of this house. Furthermore, we sit pretty close to Fair Street, so when you do raise it, you have to have stairs to raise it as well. We do not have enough front yard to properly even build 11 risers of stairs needed. The owners of this house are, this is their retirement plan. So one of the very desirable things for them was that it's on 1 step up. So we also lose our age in place when we raise it that substantial. The other thing I'll mention too, what triggered this is the renovation, and it's a complete interior renovation. We are not doing any work to the exterior, so we will not be modifying any of the existing house as it stands in the floodplain. It is a kitchen and master bath renovation. I know it's a monetary trigger based on the value of the improvements versus what we are doing to the structure. And I will say one more thing about that too, is that we are a very small footprint. We're a very small cottage. It's a 1-bedroom, 1.5 bath house. So as you can imagine, when you're renovating just a kitchen and a master bath, when you have such a small square foot to relay that cost on, that's why our cost ratio is so much higher, because the price per square foot obviously goes up when you've divided it amongst a very small square footage. So that's partly why we found ourselves in this situation. I think it's a multiple of things, but you can see from the exhibits it is a bit of a challenge should we raise it.
Thank you. All right, so next we'll open the public comment. Are there any citizen comments on this item? Seeing none, is there a motion to close the public comment?
So moved.
Motion made by Greg to close the public comment. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by William. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All right, seeing none opposed, public comment's closed. I think the exhibits are great. If staff could move forward maybe a couple slides, it really does show we've got those in the packet, but the condition there. I know I'm going back and forth between the text and the pictures and. Any questions from the board while they're pulling that up?
None from my perspective.
None for me.
I think this is one, and, yeah.
I'm ready to entertain a motion when a board member's ready.
I was ready, but I've closed I'm still getting used to the digital documents we've got here. Staff, I love the fact that we're not cutting down trees, but it's much easier if I can just put my eyes on it. But if you have a motion ready, William, I'm happy to let you make the presentation. Here we are. I'm good, I found it.
You found, okay.
Yeah. I would like to entertain or introduce a motion to approve the variance for 728 Fair Street, because I believe that there is there is good and sufficient cause. I believe that failure to grant this variance would result, as discussed, in exceptional hardship to the owner, and that granting this variance would not increase the flood heights, add an additional threat to public safety, extraordinary public expense, create nuisance, cause fraud and/or victimization of the public, or conflict with existing local laws or ordinances.
A motion for approval of the variance made by Greg. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by William. Any discussion? All in favor say aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Seeing none, variance is approved for item number 2.
Thank you, guys.
Well,
Item number 3 is a variance request to reduce the minimum garage setback for a front-loading garage from 20 feet to 6 inches behind the front facade and front door at 1141 Carter Street. Staff?
Thank you. The subject parcel is located at 1141 Carter Street and is zoned R6 Residential 6 District and within the Central Franklin overlay. The zoning ordinance requires that front-facing garages be at least 20 feet behind the front facade and front door, as well as 22 feet from the sidewalk. There is no sidewalk adjacent to this property today, and the 20-foot setback for front-facing garages has been part of the zoning ordinance since 2019, when it changed from being 10 feet behind the front facade. Staff's analysis is based off of the 3 criteria we discussed with the first request. I am not going to read each one. If you would like me to, I'm happy to do it, but I am just going to go into staff analysis if that is okay. The subject property is one of 5 single-family residential lots along Carter Street. The parcel is approximately 84 feet in width and approximately 70 feet in depth. The depth of the lot is shallower than many of the properties in this area. The zoning of the property is R6, which requires that the front setback, among other criteria, be no closer than any adjacent existing building. In this case, the adjacent building is approximately 15 feet from the front lot line. R6 also requires a 15-foot rear setback. These setbacks require a smaller than average building envelope. Because of the uniqueness of the depth of this property, staff finds that the first criteria is met. Criteria number 2. The applicant has indicated that the owners intend to build a 2-car attached garage with a living space above it. Placing the garage 20 feet behind the front facade and front door would make the garage out of compliance with the required 15-foot rear yard setback as stated in the zoning ordinance 3.8.5 and discussed in criteria 1. Due to the unique shape of the property, the strict application of the zoning ordinance would prevent a home with a 2-car attached garage from being constructed without violating some portion of the zoning ordinance, which staff finds to be a practical difficulty, and therefore this criteria is met. Criteria number 3, the proposed attached 2-car garage meets the intent of the ordinance in the narrowest margin due to the garage being set back from the front facade of the house, if by only 6 inches on the far side. With that said, the applicant has attempted to lessen the deviation from the ordinance by stepping the front of the garage back incrementally where the garage is closest to the front facade and front door. The applicant explained to staff that the requested setback was to account for the second floor of the attached 2-car garage being aligned with the middle of the second floor of the primary structure. This request meets the required side yard setbacks along the adjacent residential lots and would not cause substantial detriment to the public good if a variance were to be approved. Staff finds that this criteria is met. Staff recommends the Board of Zoning Appeals move to approve the variance request to reduce the minimum garage setback for a front-loading garage from 20 feet to 6 inches behind the front facade and front door at 1141 Carter Street because the criteria for granting a variance have been met. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, staff. Is the applicant present?
I'm Maurice Ferry, project manager for Peggy Newman Designs. I'm representing Barry Johnson. I think you summed everything up with the staff report. If you have any questions.
Okay, thanks. Next, we'll open the public comment. Any citizen comments? Seeing none, is there a motion to close the public comment?
I'll make the motion to close.
William?
Second.
We made the motion to close the public comment, seconded by Greg. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All right, public comment's closed. Any questions from the board members at all?
No questions from me.
My only question is, I'm looking at this property in the aerial shot. There's no existing structure on the property as of today. Is what appears to be a driveway, is that on the 1141 Carter Street property, or is that for the adjacent property?
That would be, are you looking at?
It would be
It's probably the aerial photo, I think.
kind of the northwestern side of the property, perhaps. I don't know if you,
I don't think that driveway is on the property.
okay, I'm just trying to get my bearings on where this property would sit relative there. Staff, there was a photo, if we could show that.
I think it is the aerial shot with looks like probably limestone drive cutting back across to those north properties.
And and there is a reason I'm asking about that driveway, because I suppose staff, in working with the applicant, there's not an opportunity to do a rear entry driveway on the property as proposed.
Because this
Rear
is a
entry.
single-family home, it has been submitted through Building and Neighborhood Services, so Lori might be able to address that better, because we don't review the single-family homes.
Yeah, that's the photo we're talking about. If you see right where your mouse is, that's the area. Sir, and I don't know if, just by looking at it, do you know if that's
No,
part
I
of the
think
property or?
that's, the property to the left.
Okay, thank you.
The side and rear yard setback is 3 feet behind the front facade. And then 3 feet behind the front facade and front door.
Are you asking about
I'm
driveway
asking
access?
if there would be space on the property to put a driveway to come into the garage from the rear.
I didn't think so because the driveway's gotta be 5 feet off the property line as
Okay.
well.
Okay, I appreciate that.
I know I'll have some discussion, but if a board member's ready to make a motion, we can get a motion on the floor anyway.
You go for it, Greg. I'm watching you guys do motions this first go around, and I'll,
Okay, that's perfect.
I'll hop on the board the
Then,
next go around.
That's great. Yeah, well, I don't know if I'm the best one to learn from, but we're glad to have you as a member. I'd like to entertain or present a motion for approval of the variance given the, for the structure at 1141 Carter Street. To, let's see, given the, what is the variance request? May I authorize variance? I'd like to present a motion to vary the 20-foot setback for front-facing garages at the property on 1141 Carter Street because it meets the exception criteria. Is that enough, staff?
Do we need a distance in there? We've got 6 inches on there, but
Might be, for purpose of the record, it's probably a good idea.
Can I complete my motion? I'd like to entertain, just for clarity, I'll restate it. I'd recommend that we approve the motion to adjust the minimum garage setback for a front-loading garage from 20 feet to 6 inches behind the front facade and front door at the property located at 1141 Carter Street because the criteria for granting a variance have been met.
okay, motion for approval made by Greg. Is there a second?
Second?
Second by William. So discussion. I'll start there. So I'm torn on this item. We're not looking at design or layout, but we are in ways, I think, on the lot. I was a little concerned just looking at rough dimensions that the garage is 40% of the width of the front of the home. Looking at the rest of the neighborhood, the context of the other homes is different.
I thought so.
We are in 2022, so I get square footage also. You're kind of looking at usability of a home and price of homes in Franklin, price of land. It's a totally different environment than it was even 10 years ago. But that's what gives me pause. We're looking at the garage setback requirement. Context makes me a little bit concerned. I don't know what your thoughts are on that.
I had similar concerns. I know, at least from Google Maps and such, it does not seem like this particular home meets or is consistent with the other homes in the area. I don't know if that matters or something we consider, but it is concerning that it'd be so close to the. There's a question for you. In terms of distance from the road, how far would the garage be from the road?
It looks like about 14 feet.
So it'll be 14?
6 inches, yeah.
Okay.
That's rough, but that's what I'm pulling from the schematic.
Because to me, the question is, and maybe it's a staff question, or when you looked at the variance request, I'm guessing the garage setback requirement, it's to break up the facade. So you don't have one kind of even plane across the front. Part of that is also just configuration on the lot, so that could change how that works. I mean, in this case, it drastically changes the square footage of the home, and I think that was mentioned in the staff report.
It does change the square footage of the home. However, there's not a ton of backyard here in this house at all. And so to ask them to move it back really eats into that backyard. And I was optimistic that we can make it a rear entry to garage just from an aesthetic perspective. But as I'm looking a little more closely at some of these drawings, it doesn't seem like there's space there to do that. I also think in addition to the square footage that's required in a home like this, I think the ability to put your cars under cover is probably a non-negotiable for a property like this. And making it somewhat contiguous with the property that exists inside, because they're getting that second floor utilization. However, I still come back to the initial motion that I made. I don't believe that, given the unique shape and depth of this property, those concerns overrun the potential hardship and the uniqueness of this property. If the property was 10 feet deeper, 20 feet deeper, I think we probably are in a very different position, but it's not.
Yep, I would agree, because we're not in a historic district, so there's not contextual review. I agree. So we've got a motion for approval, have a second. Any more discussion?
Maybe just one final question for staff. No community concerns, nobody's raised any questions that we've not seen or heard?
We haven't received anything.
Okay.
All right, so let's vote then. So Greg? We'll kind of go one by one. I'm mixing it up over
Okay,
here.
sure. Aye.
William?
Aye.
Jonathan, I'll vote aye as well. So item number 3 is approved. One final item, is there a motion for adjournment?
I can do that one.
William, is there a second?
Second.
Second by Greg. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Thank you, guys.
Great to
Thank you,
have
staff.
Thank you, staff.